What's happening, folks? Arush here, and today we're talking about photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is actually an important thing for all of us because we get two important things from it. We get oxygen, and we also get glucose. And glucose is a sugar which can make several carbohydrates like starch. So starch is made out of glucose. So from this process of photosynthesis, we get two things that we absolutely need, oxygen and glucose, which is our food. So let's take a closer look at this. First, I want to go over these two words, autotrophs and heterotrophs. Then we're going to talk about photosynthesis. I'm going to briefly mention energy and mass, and then we'll go into the photosynthesis equation. So let's go into autotrophs and heterotrophs. If you break these two words down, like all things in science, they're basically made up of suffixes and prefixes. Autotroph, the prefix auto means self or on its own. Okay, that's what auto means, self. Hetero means different or other. And lastly, that suffix troph, that is referring to nourishment or food. Okay, so if we say the word autotroph, which would be this plant, well, this plant is an autotroph because it can make food or nourishment by itself. Okay, and it does that through photosynthesis. Now, what about animals that, or organisms that can't do photosynthesis? Well, we call those heterotrophs. Okay, and again, troph is referring to nourishment or food, and hetero means different or other. Okay, so what is a heterotroph? Well, essentially, a heterotroph has to get their food or nourishment from another organism. Okay, it could be a plant or it could be another heterotroph. So let's take a closer look at this. I could say that nearly all heterotrophs depend on autotrophs to make their food. So here's what this looks like. Pretty much all food chains and all food webs start with energy from the sun. Okay, that energy from the sun is going to be used by plants to make their own food. So all the energy starts from the sun. That energy is going to get captured through photosynthesis or autotrophs or by autotrophs. Okay, and then that energy is going to be eaten by another heterotroph. And finally, that may be eaten by another heterotroph. So even though this lion or this lioness, even though she doesn't directly eat plants, she actually depends on plants because the food that she's eating, where she's getting her energy from, depends on the plants. Okay, so nearly all life depends on this process of photosynthesis to capture energy and create food for us. Now, if we look at photosynthesis, we could summarize it like this. In a plant, we have the input of sunlight. Okay? This plant is going to take in two other things. This plant is going to take in carbon dioxide, and it's going to take in water. Now, what's going to come out of photosynthesis? These are the two inputs. Carbon dioxide and water with the presence of sunlight. What's coming out of photosynthesis is going to be oxygen, which we breathe, and glucose, which we would eat. Okay? Now, these inputs and outputs could be summarized as an equation. Okay? So if we have carbon dioxide and water as our inputs, glucose and oxygen, we could summarize it in this formula. CO2, which is carbon dioxide, plus H2O, which is water, gives us C6H12O6, that's the formula for glucose, and plus O2. Now, if you look at this equation, if you look closely at it, you might notice that the left isn't necessarily, or actually isn't, balanced to the right. So here's what I mean by that. If we look over here on the left side, there's only one carbon atom. And if we look over here on the right side, we have 6 carbon atoms. We only have 2 hydrogen, but on this side we have 12. So this actually isn't a balanced equation. A common theme in science is that energy and mass cannot be created or destroyed. So everything has to be accounted for. And right now in this equation, not everything is accounted for. So we can't just magically have 6 carbons on the right side without having 6 carbons on the left. So in order for this, for photosynthesis to be a balanced equation, it should look like this. We have 6 carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water, okay? That's still going to give us 1 molecule of glucose, and it's also going to give us 6 molecules of oxygen, okay? Now, remember I said there was things going in and things coming out of the equation? Well, what's going in, we call those the reactants. So for photosynthesis, the reactants would be the 6 carbon dioxide and 6 water molecules. What's coming out is the products. So what are the products of photosynthesis? Well, it's glucose, 1 molecule of glucose, and 6 molecules of oxygen. Okay? And actually, let me remind you, this slide, once I'm finished, go ahead and put this on pause and give this slide a quick sketch. And I think this is the only slide for this lecture. Now, if you were to count up all of the atoms on the left side, they should equal all of the atoms on the right side. So let's go and take a look at this. We have 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, of CO2. So we should have 6 carbon atoms on the left. Since we have 6 molecules of CO2, that equals 12 oxygen. Okay, so we have 12 oxygen right here. And then we have 6 H2O. So we have another 6 oxygen. Okay, that's going to give us 18 oxygen. Total, 18 oxygen atoms. Now for the hydrogen, we have 6 H2Os, so this right here, 6 times 2 is 12. So on the left side of the equation, we have 6 carbon atoms total, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 18 oxygen. This should equal, the left side should equal the right. So let's take a look at this. Let's add them all up. C6, H12O6. Well, this right here is 6 carbon atoms. Hydrogen, H12. Well, we don't have hydrogen anywhere else, so we'll say there's 12 hydrogen atoms. And now for oxygen, we have 6 right here for O6. Okay, so we have 6 oxygen. And on this side, we have 6 O2. So that's 12. 18 oxygen. And if we look at the left and the right, they are completely balanced. If they weren't equal, then there would be a mistake here. Because, again, a common theme in science, energy and mass, they cannot be created or destroyed. If we look at this little animation, we see we have water and carbon dioxide. These are the 2 reactants in photosynthesis. So we have our carbon dioxide, our water, and how many do we need? Well, we need 6 of each. With the presence of sunlight, the energy coming from the sun, those atoms can be rearranged to form 6 molecules of oxygen and 1 molecule of glucose. Okay, see that one more time. We got CO2, we got water. How many of those are we going to need? We're going to need 6 molecules of each. Okay, so 6 molecules of CO2, 6 molecules of water. In the presence of sunlight, in the presence of that solar energy, those atoms are rearranged. They're broken down and rearranged into 1 molecule of glucose, which is our food, and 6 molecules of oxygen, which we breathe in. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. First, we talked about autotrophs and heterotrophs. Autotrophs would be plants, things that can go through photosynthesis, organisms that photosynthesize or make energy from the sun. Heterotrophs Heterotrophs are organisms that have to eat other organisms. So you and I, we cannot photosynthesize, so we are heterotrophs. Next, we talked about photosynthesis, how it takes in carbon dioxide and water, and in the presence of sunlight can create glucose and oxygen. Next, we talked about energy and mass, how those two things cannot be created or destroyed. They're basically just rearranged. And lastly, the photosynthesis equation, which is 6 molecules of CO2 plus 6 molecules of water, H2O, in the presence of sunlight gives us glucose, which is C6H12O6 plus 6 molecules of oxygen. That is it for this lecture, and I hope you guys have a good one. Talk to you next time.